Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to Golden Turnaround, your haven for soul-touching stories. No one could have imagined that a dirty telegram would be able to silence an entire square with cruel laughter. Under the scorching sun of Victorian Spain, a wealthy tycoon threw coins as humiliating alms, mocking the poor. No gold, no brains. But when he challenged a boy in torn clothes, "Read in whatever language you want, you hungry thing," something unimaginable happened. The boy took the paper and silenced everyone with 3 perfect languages, and what the tycoon did next nobody expected. This is the story of a poor boy who transformed humiliation into an eternal lesson, confronting the pride of the rich with the wisdom of a traveling mother. You will feel anger at the injustice, pride in his courage, and tears for the ultimate redemption that changes everything. Because sometimes true power isn't in gold, but in the heart that endures. What city or country are you listening to us from right now? Leave your comment, subscribe to the channel and like this video, because every week, new stories like this show that humility conquers kings. The sun burned mercilessly in the crowded square, and amidst the tycoon's arrogant laughter, the boy took a deep breath, picked up the telegram with trembling hands, unaware that in seconds, all that mockery would turn into stunned silence. "No gold, no brains, poor people are trash," shouted the magnate in the golden carriage, throwing coins that rolled in the dust like poisoned arms. The public square seethed under the scorching sun of Victorian Spain, where every laugh from the rich was a knife to the soul of the humble. And on that day, the 12-year-old boy felt the corrosive weight of humiliation that could destroy any heart. Torn clothes clinging to his sweaty body, his stomach rumbling with hunger, he lowered his eyes to hide the burning tears, feeling his face scorched like embers as the crowd mocked the misery he hadn't chosen. Have you ever felt that tightness in your chest when the whole world laughs at your pain before even knowing you? But no one imagined that this frail boy, invisible among the beggars, carried within him a secret that would make the magnate swallow every cruel word, a gift taught by lamplight by a traveling mother whom the world had deemed useless. The sun beat down mercilessly on the hot stones of the square, where sweaty market vendors carried baskets of fruit, barefoot children fought over crumbs, and the rich, in their fine fabrics and ivory fans, raised goblets like trophies of superiority. The magnate, with his gold-embroidered waistcoat and gleaming ring, leaned from his carriage, his face red with arrogance and wine. "Look at these walking rags," he roared, pointing at the poor kneeling and picking up coins from the mud. "Do they think they know anything besides begging?" The crowd burst into laughter, and the boy, leaning against a dirty wall, felt each laugh like a needle piercing his chest. He wanted to dig a hole in the ground and disappear forever, but something inside him, his mother's soft voice whispering foreign words on cold nights, kept him standing. The eyes of the rich passed over him as if he were air, invisible, worthless. His stomach ached. The sun burned his exposed skin, and his heart beat erratically between shame and a spark of suppressed anger. "Why do they hate us so much?" he thought, clenching his thin fists. It was then that the tycoon pulled a crumpled telegram from his pocket, raising it like a trophy. "Does anyone here read in the language of gentlemen?" he taunted, his eyes gleaming with mockery. The crowd laughed louder, betting on the silence of the illiterate. But the boy stepped forward, his voice trembling but firm. "I read in whatever language you wish." A brief silence fell, followed by an explosion of scorn. "This starving fellow doesn't even know our language properly," retorted the tycoon, tossing another coin that rolled to the boy's feet. The boy bent down to pick up the telegram, his sweaty hands leaving marks on the paper. He felt everyone's eyes like flames, his heart pounding in his ear, his stomach churning with fear and hunger. "My mother taught me better than this," he whispered to himself, taking a deep breath. The crowd expected failure. The tycoon smiled victoriously, but in the boy's eyes shone something no one else saw. The legacy of a woman who had transformed nights of abandonment into lessons about the whole world. And when he raised his face, telegram in his trembling hand, the first sound of a foreign language cut through the air like lightning, leaving everyone speechless. But what came next would change everything in that suffocating square. The tycoon leaned even further from the carriage, his embroidered velvet waistcoat gleaming in the merciless sun, and tossed another handful of coins that clinked in the dust, rolling to the feet of the kneeling beggars. "Look at these worms," he bellowed, his voice thick with wine and arrogance, surrounded by wealthy sycophants who burst into forced laughter, slapping their thighs like hyenas. One of them, with a gold chain around his neck, pointed to a bent-over old woman picking up coins from the mud. "Look at the Queen of Rags. The whole square laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the market stalls, mingling with the smell of ripe fruit and human sweat. The boy, leaning against the cracked wall of an adobe house, felt each laugh like a needle piercing his bare chest. His thin shoulders slumped, his small hands clutching his torn shirt against his stomach, which rumbled too loudly to ignore. Hot tears welled in his eyes, but he swallowed them hard, biting his lip until it hurt. Wounded pride was all that remained when the world treated you like trash. The gazes of the rich passed over him as if he were transparent, invisible, worthless. Hunger made him feel small, smaller than coins in the mud, and the sun burned his exposed skin like divine punishment. He watched everything in silence, his heart pounding erratically between anger and a deep sadness that tightened his throat. Why do they laugh at our pain, he thought, watching a beggar father lower his head to pick up a dirty coin, his children beside him with empty eyes. The magnate continued the spectacle, raising a crystal goblet. I have gold, land, knowledge. What do you have? Rags and hunger. More laughter, more coins thrown, and the boy felt completely displaced, as if he belonged to another world, where an empty stomach made any man invisible to the eyes of the powerful. It was at that moment that the tycoon's gaze met his, brief but sharp as a knife. Hey, you there, you with the dirty feet, he shouted, pointing with the crumpled telegram. Think you know anything besides begging? The crowd turned, curious and malicious, and the boy felt his stomach churn with fear. He took an involuntary step back, pressed against the warm wall, but something inside him, the soft memory of his mother's voice, whispering foreign words on cold nights, stopped him from running. The tycoon descended from the carriage with heavy steps, polished boots kicking up dust, and held out the paper. Read it in whatever language you want, you poor starving wretch. Prove you're not as stupid as you look. The square froze in sadistic anticipation. Muffled laughter returned, whispered bets. He's going to stutter. He can't even sign his name. The boy stretched out his trembling hand, his dirty fingers contrasting with the official paper, and felt the weight of all those eyes like flames. His chest rose and fell rapidly, fear mixed with hunger creating a lump in his throat, but he raised his face, his brown eyes shining with a determination no one expected. His voice came out low at first, almost swallowed by the hot wind, English words flowing perfectly, clear as a stream. Murmurs spread. Impossible, whispered a flatterer. The boy continued without pausing, switching to French with impeccable pronunciation, each syllable falling like a stone into the growing silence. Faces changed, mouths parted, hands pausing in midair. Then came the German, strong and precise, echoing through the square like unexpected thunder. The magnate paled, the telegram almost falling inertly from his hand. The crowd stood paralyzed, the sun seeming hotter, the air heavier. He finished, handed back the paper with still trembling hands but steady eyes. My mother taught me, he said simply, his voice laden with a vulnerability that touched deeply. The tycoon opened his mouth, but no words came out, only a blush rising up his broad neck. The entire square felt the impact of that silent revelation, as if the boy had uncovered a hidden truth that changed everything. But what he would say next would cut even deeper. The square erupted in deafening laughter, a collective roar that made the earthen floor vibrate beneath the boy's bare feet. The tycoon held up the dirty telegram like a hunting trophy, the crumpled paper swaying in the sun, and bellowed in a thundering voice, "Read it in whatever language you want, you poor starving wretch. Show that you're not as stupid as your face suggests." Laughter rolled like an avalanche. Market vendors slapping their thighs, the rich waving fans in mockery, beggars bowing their heads in shame. The boy felt his face burn like live embers, the heat rising from his chest to his ears, each laugh driving a needle deeper into his racing heart. He opened his mouth, his voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "I'll read in whatever language you want." A brief silence fell like a pause before lightning, but the tycoon immediately spat venom. "Poor thing, you don't even know our own language properly. Go back to your mud." The crowd roared again, louder, bets flying in the hot air. "He'll stutter. He doesn't even know the alphabet." The boy's legs weakened, limp as wet rags, his stomach churning in a knot of hunger and terror. He wanted to disappear into the dust forever, dig a hole in the dry earth and never return. The weight of all those eyes was crushing, pure judgment, as if his misery were a public crime. But something inside him stirred, a stubborn spark born of cold nights with his mother. He stretched out his dirty hand, his trembling fingers touching the rough telegram, smelling the scent of old ink and dust. The tycoon crossed his arms, a sadistic grin stretching his wine-red face. The square held its breath in cruel expectation. The boy took a deep breath, his chest rising like a broken bellows, and began, English words flowing clean, precise, echoing through the square like an unexpected bell. Murmurs spread. "What the hell?" whispered a sycophant, eyes wide. Without pausing, he continued in French, sweet syllables dancing in the warm air, perfect pronunciation cutting through the growing astonishment. Faces changed, mouths slightly open, fans suspended in mid-air, hands clasped to chests in shock. The magnate frowned, sweat beading on his broad forehead. Then came the German, strong and rhythmic, each consonant falling like a hammer into the settling silence. The crowd froze. The sun seemed hotter, the air thicker, dust suspended like a veil over stunned eyes. The boy finished, returned the paper with hands still trembling, but eyes firmer than ever. He didn't shout victory. He just stood there, serene in the storm he had created. The tycoon blinked, gaping, a blush rising from his collar to his ears. "How?" he stammered, his voice hoarse for the first time. The entire square felt the impact of that silent transformation, as if the boy had torn away the veil of collective arrogance. But he didn't stop there. He raised his thin chin, his voice gaining soft strength. "My mother taught me. She traveled the world while you counted coins." A murmur of reverence grew, mixed with guilt. Downcast eyes, restless hands. The tycoon took a half-step back, his pride cracking like dry earth. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Who is that mother?" The boy smiled slightly, his eyes moist with memory. "A woman the world called crazy, but who gave me more than gold." The revelation hung in the air, touching hearts hardened by a harsh life. The tycoon cleared his throat, trying to regain control, but his voice came out weak. "And what does a poor traveler know about fine tongues?" The boy stared directly at him, without hatred, only with a raw truth that hurt more than any scream. A deathly silence fell like heavy dust over the square, the scorching sun seeming to stand still in the sky. The boy took a deep breath, his thin chest rising and falling like a broken bellows, his trembling hands reaching out to grab the tycoon's dirty telegram. His sweaty fingers left marks on the crumpled paper, the smell of old ink mingling with the sweat and dust rising from the cracked ground. All eyes were fixed on him, judgment, scorn, cruel expectation. He lifted his face, his brown eyes gleaming with a stubborn spark, and began, words in English flowing clean, precise, echoing through the square like an unexpected bell in the midst of chaos. Murmurs spread like dry wind. "Impossible," whispered a wealthy flatterer, his eyes wide with disbelief. The tycoon frowned, his initial blush giving way to confusion, sweat beading on his broad forehead. The boy didn't stop, his voice gaining soft strength. He switched to French, sweet syllables dancing in the warm air, his perfect pronunciation cutting through the growing astonishment like a thin blade. Mouths dropped open in the crowd, hands hung in mid-air with fans and baskets, hearts racing, feeling the impact of that unexpected transformation. An elderly woman clutched her chest, shocked, while market vendors dropped fruit on the ground. Then came the final blow. Impeccable German, strong consonants rhythmically pounding like a hammer in the settling silence. The square froze completely, pale faces, held breaths, the magnate sweating profusely on his forehead, his embroidered vest now resembling a tight prison. No one moved. The warm wind carried dust around, but the air was dense, laden with a hidden truth that changed everything. The boy finished, returned the telegram with still trembling hands but firm, serene eyes. No hatred, only contained pride shining like an inner light that no Spanish sun could rival. The tycoon blinked slowly, his mouth agape, his arrogance cracking like dry earth in summer. "How did a poor traveler teach you that?" he stammered, his voice hoarse for the first time, his restless hands clutching the empty air. The crowd murmured reverently, a mixture of astonishment and guilt. Lowered eyes, heads bowed in reflective silence. The boy smiled slightly, vulnerability touching his voice. "She didn't leave gold, sir. She left the world in the words she whispered by lamplight when hunger knocked at the door." Discreet tears streamed down faces hardened by life, mothers pressing their children to their chests, feeling the boy's emotional journey as a mirror of their own pain. Someone shouted from the back, "Who was your mother?" The boy raised his chin, his voice gaining a painful sweetness. "A woman the world called crazy, but she showed me that knowledge is a bridge where gold cannot reach." The tycoon took a half step back, his wounded pride bleeding silently. while the entire square absorbed that revelation like both balm and wound at the same time. He cleared his throat, trying to raise his voice. "Pretty words don't pay the price," but it sounded weak, empty, echoing against the boy's newfound confidence. The crowd approached slowly, light touches on the boy's shoulders, silent respect replacing scorn. An old beggar woman extended her trembling hand. "God bless you, boy." He smiled, his heart light for the first time, feeling the palpable transformation in the air, from invisible to beacon. The tycoon watched, shoulders tense, his mind racing with internal decisions that would change everything from then on. But what would he do with that burning shame inside? The answer would come sooner than anyone imagined. The entire square held its breath, the sun still burning mercilessly, as the boy raised his thin hand to his chest, his voice softening like a night breeze after a storm. "My mother was a traveler," he said, his moist eyes glistening with sweet and painful memories. "She taught me by lamplight when the world spat us out like garbage. Cold nights at Spanish crossroads, she whispered words from distant lands, while hunger knocked at the door." A reverent murmur spread, mothers in the crowd pressing their children to their chests, feeling the echo of that maternal journey in their own lives marked by struggle. The boy's mind traveled back in time, as if time were dissolving into the hot dust. He was 7 years old, the adobe hut trembling in the wind, his mother lying on a worn mattress, her face pale with fever consuming her strength. A flickering lamp cast dancing shadows on the cracked walls, the scent of medicinal herbs mingling with the sweat of agony. "Repeat after me, my love," she whispered, her voice weak but firm, her parched lips tracing soft English. "Freedom, hope, courage." He repeated it, sobbing, tears falling onto the torn book open in her lap. Then French, freedom, love, truth, his little hands squeezing her cold ones. Finally German, freedom, heart, strength, each word a farewell disguised as a lesson. She smiled through spasms of pain, her feverish eyes fixed on his. "The world will laugh at you, son, but these words are your armor. No one can take away what lives inside." He sobbed, embracing her frail body, feeling her heart weaken like a dying flame, her last whisper in 3 languages, mingling with the howling wind outside. The fever took her that morning, leaving him orphaned with only yellowed maps and a heart full of the world. Heartbreaking pain transformed into eternal love, each language a piece of the mother that fate had stolen too soon. Back in the square, he lowered his hand from his chest, his voice choked but firm. "She left without gold, but she gave me the whole world. Every word of hers still lives here." It touched his heart again, and collective tears streamed down his face. A market vendor sobbed loudly. An old beggar wiped his eyes with a dirty sleeve. Even wealthy sycophants bowed their heads in silent guilt. The magnate, pale as wax melting in the sun, wiped sweat from his brow, his cracked pride exposing raw vulnerability. Poor traveler," he murmured, his voice faltering for the first time. The crowd approached slowly, light touches on the boy's shoulders, respect born from shared empathy. An elderly mother extended a trembling hand. "Your mother was a saint, boy. May God protect her." He smiled shyly, his heart warming with that unexpected confidence, feeling the palpable transformation in the air, thick with dust and emotion. The tycoon stepped back, shoulders tense, his mind spinning with internal decisions that gnawed at him from within. The hidden truth of maternal humility, wounding more than any verbal defeat. But the boy didn't dwell on the memory. He raised his chin, looking directly at the tycoon. "You laugh at the hunger she faced alone with me, but she taught me that gold buys bread today, words nourish forever." The square murmured in approval, the impact of that revelation cutting like a gentle blade. The tycoon opened his mouth, but swallowed hard, a blush of shame rising up his broad neck. And when he finally spoke, something in his voice already carried a crack of redemption. But what would come of that confession, forced by the truth, from a boy? The boy stepped forward in the hot dust, his voice firm but his moist eyes reflecting the sun like shattered diamonds. "Money buys gold, sir, but not souls," he proclaimed, echoing through the square like a cracked bell. "Never judge a man by the tattered clothes he wears. My mother wore rags but carried the whole world in her heart." The crowd froze, the impact of those words cutting through the dense air like a sharp blade, touching old wounds in every soul present. Faces hardened by life softened, mothers hugging their children with renewed strength, market vendors silently dropping their baskets in reverent silence. The tycoon felt his face flush blood red with shame, his hands trembling at his sides, sweat trickling down the embroidered collar that now felt like a suffocating prison. He opened his mouth, but swallowed hard, his pride crumbling into visible pieces, shoulders hunched, his gaze fleeting toward the carriage as if seeking escape. The crowd bowed their heads in silent guilt, the collective weight of their misguided mindset falling like heavy rain. An old beggar woman sobbed first, hand to her chest. "He's right," she murmured, and the sound spread like a wave, tears streaming down calloused faces, fans still in the hot air. The boy continued, his voice gaining serene strength. "How many times have we laughed at someone else's pain before hearing the story behind the rags? My mother faced storms alone, but she never cursed the world that spat her out." A heavy silence settled in, broken only by discreet sobs. A beggar father wiped away tears with a dirty mango. A market vendor hugged her daughter, whispering, "We'll never laugh like that again." The sharp reflection swept through the square like a purifying wind, forcing each person to confront their own vulnerability, the inner transformation beginning there, in the dust where coins had rolled like insults. The tycoon stepped back, his boots kicking at the dry earth. A blush now mingled with a strange glint in his eyes, not anger, but painful recognition. "You speak like a grown man," he admitted hoarsely, his voice faltering for the first time, his restless hands clutching the empty air. The crowd murmured soft approval, confidence born in the courage of this boy who had exposed the truth hidden from everyone. He lowered his eyes for a moment, a memory of his mother warming his chest. "She taught me to forgive those who judge, because judgment is the prison of the judge." Someone on the outskirts shouted, "God bless you, wise little one." Light touches brushed his shoulders, spontaneous respect, as if the entire square were reborn. The magnate watched, his mind spinning with turbulent decisions, the impact of that lesson corroding years of accumulated arrogance. He cleared his throat, trying to lift his chin. "Pretty words don't change the hunger I see." But it sounded empty, echoing against the serenity of the boy who replied without rancor, "Hunger goes away with bread. Shame like yours, only with heart." The tension grew subtly, the crowd's gaze fixed on the tycoon awaiting his next move, redemption or escape. He took a half step back, cold sweat trickling down his spine, feeling the weight of collective conscience for the first time. The boy remained motionless, his heart light despite the internal battle, knowing that some victories are won not with shouts, but with truths that endure. But what would that rich man do with the shame burning inside him? The answer would change everything from then on. The tycoon took a step back, his face still red, but now with a strange glint in his eyes, not of anger, but of something broken inside. Without a word, he turned slowly to the carriage, head bowed, shoulders slumped like sacks of heavy flour. He climbed the steps, his boots dragging dust, the sound echoing in the square, now mute in silent reverence. All eyes followed him, but no one laughed. The boy remained in the center, head held high for the first time, heart light as a feather in the wind, the pain that had crushed him minutes before transforming into a warm, palpable dignity that warmed his heart, empty of hunger. The crowd slowly parted, forming a spontaneous corridor of respect. A market vendor touched his shoulder with a calloused hand. "God protect you, wise little one." He smiled shyly, feeling the weight of their gazes shift from judgment to gentle admiration. He walked through the square, his bare feet stepping on coins the magnate had thrown as insults. Now they seemed irrelevant, cold metal against the inner fire that was being born. Neighbors approached, light touches on his arms, whispers of "We're proud of you." The sun still burned, but it no longer hurt. The dust beneath his feet seemed like a trail of victory, each step restoring what humiliation had stolen. He arrived at the cracked adobe house, the door creaking like a greeting from an old friend. The interior was simple, a worn mattress where his mother had died, an extinguished lamp on a rough table, yellowed maps on the walls recounting journeys the world had ignored. He sat on the cold floor, hugging his knees, and let the tears flow freely now, not of pain but of profound relief, like a dammed river finally running. "Mom, did you see?" he whispered to the emptiness, his hand on his chest where her words still pulsed alive. The afternoon faded slowly, shadows stretching out through the window without glass, and for the first time he felt visible, valuable, whole. 3 days passed in humble routine, helping neighbors with heavy baskets, sharing meager bread, reciting maternal lessons to curious children who surrounded him like a local hero. The town square whispered his story, the tycoon's coins becoming legends of redemption, but on the morning of the 4th day, a firm knock on the old door made him leap. A trembling letter in the hands of a sweaty messenger. "Come to my farm immediately." The red wax seal gleamed with a golden coat of arms, that of the tycoon. His heart raced, fear mixed with confused hope, his dirty fingers trembling as he broke the seal. He read the formal words in the dim morning light, his stomach churning with bittersweet anxiety. "Come, there's something I must say." He folded the paper, feeling the weight of the unknown. Would it be a trap of wounded pride or a gateway to true transformation? He looked out the cracked window, the sun rising over dry fields, and took a deep breath as if in the town square. His mother whispered in his memory, "Courage is not the absence of fear, son, it's walking anyway." He tucked the letter into his torn chest, went out the door, his feet firmly on the warm earth. The neighbors watched curiously, but he walked with a newfound serenity, his heart beating not only with uncertainty, but with confidence in the journey that was beginning. The farm was far away, under a relentless sun, but each step seemed guided by his mother, by the lesson of the town square, by the vulnerability that unites men. But what awaited him in that house with high walls? The setting sun tinged the fields with liquid gold when the boy arrived at the luxurious farm, its white walls gleaming like an uncertain promise, the gate creaking open as silent servants listened. The inner courtyard was the opposite of the dusty square, murmuring fountains, exotic flowers in porcelain vases, air perfumed with jasmine instead of sweat and ripe fruit. He stopped, his bare feet soiling the polished marble, his heart pounding between fear and that stubborn hope his mother had planted. The magnate emerged from the shaded veranda without an embroidered waistcoat, just a simple unbuttoned shirt, his face marked by sleepless nights, his deep-set eyes carrying the weight of 3 days of solitary reflection. Without ceremony, the man descended the steps and fell to his knees at the boy's feet, his choked voice breaking the silence of the courtyard. "I beg your forgiveness, little one, not for your words that silenced me, but for your humility that broke me inside." Tears streamed down his bearded face, his hands calloused from counting gold now trembling empty in the air. The boy blinked, stunned, feeling his chest tighten with unexpected emotion. The same man who had thrown coins as insults now kneeling, raw vulnerability replacing arrogance. "I laughed at your hunger without seeing the giant soul you carried," continued the magnate, his voice hoarse with accumulated guilt. "3 days thinking about your traveling mother, and I saw my mistake reflected in every coin I threw." The boy hesitantly extended his hand, touching the broad shoulder, and the tycoon lifted his wet face. "Rise, sir," he whispered, his voice as soft as his mother had taught him. "Forgiveness isn't begged on your knees, it's lived standing." The man rose slowly, shoulders still stooped, and gestured to the table under the flowered pergola. "Sit down. I have a promise to make." Fresh bread, creamy cheese, and cold well water were served. The boy ate slowly. Hunger mingled with gratitude, while the tycoon spoke with renewed eyes. "I will give you an extraordinary future, school in the capital, studies throughout the world, land to cultivate your own journey. Not because of the languages you speak, but because I see a man where the world saw a dirty rag." Tears welled in the boy's eyes, falling onto the soft bread, his heart overflowing with a peace that not even his mother's death had stolen. "She was the greatest teacher, sir," he said, his voice choked but firm, "but I accept your forgiveness as a lesson that closes our circle." He stood and embraced the magnate as if he were a lost father, thin arms encircling the broad torso, the setting sun bathing them in golden light, fountains murmuring like a silent blessing. The man sobbed softly, embracing back with protective strength, feeling for the first time the true redemption that gold could never buy. Poetic justice was being fulfilled there, on the opulent farm. Self-esteem restored, vulnerability transformed into eternal trust. The servants watched from afar, their moist eyes witnessing the perfect catharsis. The boy who had silenced the square was now healing the oppressor's heart. The magnate took a step back, wiping his face. "Go home today. Tomorrow I'll send a cart for your journey. And take this." He handed over a simple leather bag, not of gleaming gold, but heavy with honest coins. "Not as alms, as seeds for your future." The boy smiled, his heart lighter than ever, and walked through the gate at dusk, his silhouette against the rosy sky, his feet firm on the earth that now seemed welcoming. Back in the humble cabin, he opened his mother's maps by lamplight, tears of hope falling onto the yellowed pages. The world was opening up, school studies, horizons she had dreamed of, but the greatest treasure remained in his heart, the lesson of transforming pain into a bridge, humiliation into elevation. Under eternal Spanish stars, he whispered, "Mom, your gold shone today.